Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, just to talk about myself, I'm a Brazilian from Rio de Janeiro. I am an economist. My master was also in economics and economic policies, to be more precise, in with Erasmus Mundus joint master degree. And like many of you do, I worked in some UN institutions, and since March, I've been working at DIAL, the Digital Impact Alliance. And since June, I've been working with the digital principles, mainly in the part of the data for it. So I cleaned all the data in our list of endorsers. I identified some problems which were in the data and the mechanisms which were generating these problems, and I acted to fix them. And also, I'm the one coordinating the new process for endorsing the digital principles, which is already finishing and is being developed by our developers now. Um, well, so that's the basic slides. So let me start now to talk about the digital principles. As you probably realized, we can call them both digital principles and the principles for digital development, or also just by the acronym DP. As you know, there are 9 cores, and I know many of you work in endorser organizations, so maybe some of you have already worked with them and are touched upon them during the course of your work. Here, I also meant I'm working. I mentioned that I work in DIO, and since the digital principles, I work also with the catalog of digital solutions, which is a tool that I will share with you later. I'm working particularly in the agriculture and rural development work stream. So I know that many of you here work for WFP. So I think we can have some good conversations here. So why we have the digital principles? We have the digital principles mainly to avoid problems happening worldwide with digital initiatives. And not only digital initiatives, but also initiatives deploying digital solutions, or initiatives who have digital components in it in some way. These avoiding replicating these problems, avoiding efforts, duplications, and scaling up is our core mission at DIO. I'll talk more soon how we wrap up all of these to advocate for public digital infrastructure. But well, you can read here the slide. I imagine many of you know what pilotics is, but for the ones who don't, it's the act of continuously pursuing small healthcare projects but never scaling them. This was a problem mainly identified in the health system, but which also applies to several other sectors. As you see here, most of the things we talk about here are cross-sectoral, and we have a huge work of identifying components which are interoperable for initiatives across different sectors. So a bit of our brief story. DIO we don't own the digital principles. They were created by several partners, some UN institutions, World Bank, USA. The also was part of it. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is an important partner of us, was also part of it. And at DIO specifically, we are the steward of them. Just to be more precise, we at DIO, we are based at the United Nations Foundation in Washington, D.C. So as you can see by the place where I have been talking, there is a concentration of digital endorsers, digital principles endorsers. Although we do have endorsers from all parts of the world, there is still an imbalance of it. Just to point out, I mentioned that I'm coordinating the new process for the endorsing, but which so far is not in place. So currently we still have our traditional way of endorsing, which is open for every organization that you may be working in and requires mainly a formal statement signed and containing our statement to endorse and adhere to the principles, a logo, and a point of contact for the digital principles. The logo I'll talk later when I talk about the catalog, but it's a way to represent you. And why we have a point of contact? Because the principles are not simply a framework. We have a whole community designed around the digital principles. We have our digital principles forum, which is active, discussing many of common issues that our partners and every global development actor may be facing on the day-to-day. This forum was launched in 2017 and is an evolution from the digital principles Google's group that we used to have before. And also, we have many resources, and also we have a resource library. We have both materials that we produced and materials from other organizations. For the digital principles, for DIAL, we are never focused on having our own things, on having our own production. All our focus is to scale up existing solutions, to share existing knowledge, and to connect siloed knowledge. So let's talk about the 9 digital principles themselves. This first one here is probably the most cited nowadays, also many times referred to as user-centered design. So what does it mean? It's kind of intuitive, like, okay, I'll have the user in the center of me, but what are we really talking about? We are talking about firstly at really placing the user and the different types of users at the core of your initiative, regardless of being a for-profit or non-profit, governmental or not initiative. The user must be in the center. And one thing that is not only common in digital development, but in most of the things in our world is that you may have the best model in the world. You may have the best ideas in the world. You may have the best way to apply them. You may have the best experience applying these before. Every single thing in this world needs to be adapted to its context. And as I mentioned, we should incorporate different types of users. And how do we do it? Simply saying that we are incorporating them? No, making an iterative process. You can't incorporate all the types of users in one single round. You need several rounds of feedbacks. And both before the beginning of your project and also throughout the product lifecycle. And well, we have different users. You have to be careful with all of them, but special focus should always be placed on the underserved ones. I'll talk more about this later as well. So how can we do it in practice? One possible way is to lead qualitative focus groups with your users, and also to create community learning events so you can engage your community and your ecosystem around your project, and not only engage them around, but have them side by side with you. That's a more practical method of doing it, let's say. You have more theoretical ones, so you can create user stories, user personas, user scenarios, which will be helpful for you for planning this initial phase. Another way, people working on poor communities probably know what I'm talking about, is identifying local leaders and their spheres of influence, which is very important. So let's go to our second one. Think on understanding the ecosystem. As I said, everything needs to be adapted to its context. One exercise that's not part of our resource, at least the ones that I know, but one exercise that I personally really like is thinking on a mapping exercise. Place your organization, your initiative at the middle of it. What is around? Take just a piece of paper, a pencil, and draw a circle for your organization and a circle for every other organization, being closer and larger as more important they are for you. And use it for people, use it for networks, use it for culture. And when I talk here about culture, I talk about habits, I talk about arts which are relevant to the people, traditions, but I also talk about technology. Let's remember that technological preference are cultural. For example, we can say that in US there is a stronger preference for Apple and iOS than in other countries, in other similar countries, for example. But I talk only about people, network, and culture. No, I talk about infrastructure, in this case, both physical and digital. I talk about also about politics. And when I talk about politics, I mean political force, legal or not, and also regulations and institutions which are in place. And mainly, as always, we talk about economy. So don't why does understand the ecosystem helps you, for example, to not start from the scratch. That's part of our focus of not duplicating efforts. Learn with similar experience, and when I mean similar experience, by understanding the ecosystem, are experience which happen in the same context, or in a previous moment of the same context as you, or are happening simultaneously, or are also in their planning phase, like you are doing. And also, when you are doing this exercise, you may think like, okay, I have everything that I need. I know it. I know my ecosystem. I know my politics. I know network. I know this. But any your partners, any your workers, are they aware of all their needs? Do they need reskilling? Do they need upskilling for this? So all of this, as I mentioned, our core mission here is to scale up. And why do we do this? We were born with this diagnosis that when we are talking about initiatives, when we're talking about initiatives deploying digital solutions, we are talking about lots of duplicating efforts. And most of the initiatives are often siloed. We can have some reasons for it. One is a too much focus on sectoral opportunities and on sectoral approach. So disconnecting these opportunities from other initiatives that may be working with similar issues in the same context, but simply approach health instead of education. Well, while of course both of them have also commonalities. So, but this not only happens only because of sector. Let's talk more. This happens as many things in this world by a lack of efficiency, by a lack of coordination, and by a lack of organization. So it's just these basically, but yeah, lack of efficiency is something that we would all win on these situations. So we have basically win-win situations to improve here. Unfortunately not. We also have sometimes some conflicts of interest here. One, for example, that we commonly face is the CV bias. Think on your CV. Think on your LinkedIn. It's beautiful there. Now you have analytics for a better word. Course is even more beautiful. But what sounds better in your CV? I implemented a program, let's say, about digitalizing school feeding programs. I implemented this program. I started it. I invented it. I designed it, and I implemented it. Or I continue with an existing program, improving based on feedback from external partners. Of course, the first one sounds more exciting. You made things, you created it, but in the end, for the overall benefit of the community involved, is it really the better that you start once again something else? So this not only applies for people implementing them, this applies also for donors who can also say that they financed, I don't know how many different initiatives. They also apply for other stakeholders who can also have these problems of our CVs and conflicts of interest. On the other hand, don't try to scale more than what is reasonable. Even though you may have reasons for scaling, be aware of how much you should scale. I will talk about data-driven later, but have a way to measure the impact of your initiative. And when I mean to have a way of measure an initiative, now we are talking about measurements. I talk about setting your metric, your measurement unit for scale and for relevant variables that you may have in your project. Also, map different factors, both necessary factors and sufficient factors that should be in place for scaling them. Establish and identify which ones are under your control and which ones are not, and have strategies for the ones who aren't, which aren't. Be aware of context difference. When you are scaling up, you are going to other contexts. Be aware of legal rights that you may be facing, such as naming rights, proprietary rights, and I'll talk more about it later as well. And also, even when, unfortunately, it's the time to discontinuing an initiative, be aware that that's not an end for what happened there. Every organization, every initiative generated knowledge about it, generated know-how, and this shouldn't be lost, should be shared. And well, I like talking in the design with the user, designing in an adaptable way. So as I mentioned, you have many rounds of feedback throughout the project lifecycle. So design your project in a way that you can incorporate them, being adapted to them. So build for sustainability. Plan a business model which is sustainable and to not be focused and to not be forced to discontinue it. Take your map back of relevant stakeholders. Who can be your donors? Who can be your clients? Who can cooperate with your core actions? So of course, the most similar organizations, but also, are there other partners, other possible stakeholders that are not that related with your organization, with your initiative, but which are easy to contact, easy to partner, and that you can, for example, facilitate the back office, facilitate auxiliary activities, be smart on how you can partner with each partner which is there. As always, be evidence here, but especially here. Are there similar initiatives? Why didn't they achieve the results? And the last slide as well, I mentioned to identify relevant variables and their units of measurement. One of them is very easy and is very common in our lives, which is money. In the case of unit of measurement, a currency used usually dollar, or of course, depending on your local context. Anticipate possible problems you may have in short and long run, and also be aware of problems that you cannot prevent at all. Of course, we faced a pandemic, we are facing this war, nobody could have, most of people couldn't have imagined this. So trying to prevent then financial problems, can you prevent them via financial institutions or not? So think on your resource. Do you have already the resource for potentially scaling up? Is there might some other legal issue that you may be facing? And be data driven. Usually I talk here about the outputs and outcomes difference. I imagine all of you here know the difference. Otherwise, let me know that I would be happy to explain. But well, the difference in outputs and outcomes also related with the idea that we mentioned about the CV biases. So, well, as all of you here know, being data-driven is one of the most important issues for any organization. This was always, but especially now that we have so many huge loads of data in for our availability. For example, my mother is an economist as well. Her first internship was just going from the office to the public library in Rio de Janeiro, copying a lot of numbers and coming back to her boss with this. Of course, we don't need this anymore. Of course, we don't even have problems on getting most of the data we want. So what's our problem now? Our problem is knowing how to deal with all this amount of data and how to do quickly, because many times we have to deal quickly. How can we have it? We can have ways for measuring, as I talked about. We will have an activity also about the SDGs, and all our activities, all our work at Digital Principles and Dial is also centered around our main framework, which is the SDGs. What are the SDGs? The SDGs are ways of measuring impact. There are 17 goals, all of them with indicators that can be measured, and you can track their results as time goes on. And sorry, and that's why we look at data, we look at the SDGs to understand what are the real things that are going on and what are the specificities that we may have. And our data helps us to go beyond what may not, in a first look, may not sound intuitive. For example, you took our introductory course, and you saw there in Mama Jam that they give preference not only when talking about maternal health, but also when talking about the baby and kids health, they give preference for the mother. if it's our first time thinking about this issue, this may sound intuitive that the preference should be given equally for men and women because, well, biologically we're all equal, isn't it right? What motivates then for to give preference for women? And that's not only in our theory of Mama Jam. Here in Brazil, we have a very successful CCT, which also gives preference for women. What makes this happening? Because we have data to know how things work. We have data to know that if we want to really think on childhood, we should place the focus on women. If we really want to give preference for children, we should place the focus on women. That women already face severe inequalities on their day-to-day, and that we should tackle this. We only can go beyond initial intuitive thoughts if we have data for this. And in this case specifically, every single data corroborates this. And well, okay, you have your data telling you the story that you need, but don't be passive about this data. We know here that many people can squeeze numbers to use them to tell any story they might want, many times far from reality. So how can, especially this group here, really interested in data, understand the methodologies of how they are created? And about understanding the methodologies in theory, it's very, very important, always. But understand as well how they work in practice. Understand how is this context where this data is collected. For example, I'm also, apart from my work, I'm a volunteer in a social project where I coordinate in one favela, one slum here in Rio de Janeiro. Things work very, very, very differently than when I worked with data in Paris or in Switzerland. It's completely different. So be aware of how things work there. Once again, be aware of the context specificities. Also, now talking more a bit about theory, many different methodologies may have many different issues that can reflect on your data, and your data reflects the methodology. For example, I worked in UNDP in Georgia, the country. I always remember I was an intern there, and my first time I faced the results of one survey we had, which was, and one of the questions was, where do you live? The option A was in Georgia, the option B was outside Georgia, and there was an option C, which was other. Of course, there is no sense of having other. Of course, in Georgia and outside Georgia encompass every single possibility. But why there was other there? Because this methodology had to assume that the people had the right to opt out for the options there, as always. In this methodology, there was always the option of other. So be aware that the data reflects this. Be aware of how is sampling constructed. For example, in the social project that I mentioned, if the household is not there when we want to collect data from him, there is no single possibility of reassessing our sample and looking for someone similar. We simply go to the next door, and that's how the reality there imposed to us. So that's how we should deal with it. And then you may be thinking, oh, okay, but this harms the data quality. Sure, for sure. And that's why many times we prefer to not do some surveys, because we prefer data quality than data quantity. But well, we all know here we have techniques for dealing with it. If you cannot trust at all on the level of your data, but you have different points in time where you have this data in the same methodology, you can at least compare the evolution. You can have index for this. And well, so if you want to seek data, if you want to gather data for one specific sector, for one specific technology, how can you do it? You know many databases, you know some repositories. When I talk about the catalog, I'll show you our open data tab, which I hope can help many of you. Well, here, using open standards, open data, open source, and open innovation. Open source are products, apps, websites, and others where you can find their code, programming language, public available. And this term, although it originally references software, the open source model for software development inspired many and many different ways of open collaboration, such as open content and open data. As I just said, you have OSI approved license for softwares, Creative Commons license for content, Open Data Commons for open data. Have full lots of lists of license here. But well, if there are three different things, why we talk them together? Because I'm not talking about isolated standards. They are connected with each other, and especially all of them are connected as a foundational block for what we call digital public infrastructure. Many of you probably know repositories such as Digital Public Goods Alliance and GitHub, which, for example, feed our catalog. So reuse and improve. Here also many people look this thinking on more sustainability, and also it's connected, but we are mainly here talking about knowledge and the knowledge which was generated. We don't advocate for sharing knowledge just for the sake of sharing because we want everything to be public and available. We advocate for sharing knowledge because that's how we build upon existing knowledge, and that's how we improve the existing knowledge. And well, take back your partner's map. Take back it. Aren't there any potential partnerships that we may have not explored yet? Isn't there any partner that you, before you thought like, okay, there's not much way of collaborating, but now you see a similar resource that you use or both use as an input, or one provides this input that you are using, or vice versa? And take back your piece of paper with your map and think on ways of partner with them and on improving this partnership. Don't be a siloed organization. Share. And how can you share? You participate in technical groups, forums, in webinars. You come to a course like I'm doing here for sharing the knowledge that we had in DIAL. Within your organization, within your community, for example, probably you have many young workers, low-skilled workers. Can't you set up technical groups, for example, for things they have in common so they can discuss and help each other? Can't you assign one high-level senior professional, so at least from times to times this professional will supervise and recommend for this group in order for them to upskill? Here's a more legal one that many times can be quite problematic. We do collect data from your users. How safe is data? We have seen across the last years how many times we didn't see news about leakings and hackers invading and getting data. So you must be responsible. There are different legislations emerging around the world about it. Which consequence will you face in the case of leaking? Perform a risk-benefit analysis of it. Define data ownership, data sovereignty, and access before any data is collected or captured. And also don't think this is just for your project lifecycle, but create an end-of-life policy for this data. Remember that this data will be there. And well, as always, risks are also context dependent. And risks and people may be harmed. If I describe now your house, you working in many different well-known organizations, probably won't be ashamed. It won't be a problem. I'll describe you have, I don't know how many rooms, I don't know how many furniture, but many poor people would be ashamed if their house is public available, how it's there. And be transparent with the individuals that you are, which data you are gathering, how you are collecting it, mainly obtain informed consent from them. Be responsible with this data. And also I talked about like this disclosing your data about your house. Of course, this is just an extreme example, but think about personable and identifiable data. This shouldn't be open, and actually you should minimize whenever possible this identifiable data. And remember that even when you anonymize the data, so you won't have in your micro data the names of people, but you have simply user 1, user 2, for example. Remember that depending on the context you are, other parts of this data may help identify. Let's say, for example, I don't tell the name of the person that I interviewed, but in the occupation, it says that the person was president of US for 2 terms. In the leisure activity, it says basketball. And in other things of life, it says that the person got a Nobel Peace Prize. That's, of course, easily to identify. So now I'm, of course, giving an extreme example, but depending on the context, this may be very easy to identify. And for the ones who know poor communities, you know that this may be a huge problem, depending on the answers. So, as I said, risks are context specific as well. And take back your map of relevant stakeholders and assess their possibilities. Try mapping them to different partners and initiatives of your organizations to be collaborative. Apply knowledge in your organization across programs and office. As I said, set up technical groups with different workers in different times of their life, with different backgrounds and experience. And invest to foster cross-organization collaboration. Reflect which are your internal barriers, which are your external barriers to collaborate, and how can you reduce them? Competition, lack of funding, many disincentives can harm their way of collaboration. Have these ways of internally, as I mentioned, but also have external ways. Host an event for open sharing. Have a hackathon, for example. Have a networking event. Plan to publish materials under Creative Commons license and share your code by default. And to end the 9 principles themselves, just point out, many people, every person will say, oh yeah, I want to be collaborative, but that's not simply an idea or a position that we stand for. It's something that requires you resource, both in terms of time and in terms of money. So as finishing this presentation, as you may have seen, our principles, we set up 9 of them, but they are really entangled among each other. So here's just one of the examples that we can have. I imagine many of you know ODK. So that's a tool that I really like, and I use it a lot, for example. And now that you are aware of how the digital principles work, take back your map of relevant stakeholders. Where is the digital principles community there? Where you would place them? Us. And why you have principles? Because principles are valuable, because they synthesize existing items in order to create a common vision about how to institutionalize lessons learned in the use of digital technologies to support development. Hi, Dana and Florian. How was it?
It was really nice. It was a bit short, but the project was related to one of our projects, so it was easy to find answers. But yeah, it was nice.
Can you see my screen? Hello. Is it everybody here back? No. Okay, now I see it. There are no more breakout rooms? No?
Everybody is here now.
Okay, so well, I hope you like the activity. We have quite a few things to present, so didn't have much time for this, but I hope this helped you to illustrate a bit of how the principles work together with the SDGs. And I'll be talking now about our flagship product here at Dial, which is also very connected with the digital principles, which is our catalog of digital solutions. as part of our efforts to scale up activities and not starting from the scratch, we have to learn with what's already there. So let me launch the catalog. The catalog, of course, we catalog many different kinds of solutions. So we have many different types. We have our more theoretical, this one that you all know about the SDGs. We have these three here, which are the more theoretical ones as well, which are our use case, our workflows and common building blocks that are often used across digital initiatives, such as analytics and business intelligence, a workflow here as well, of data collection. And we have, let's say, our more real world. Neil, you have a doubt?
Yeah, hi, Mateus. Sorry to interrupt. Just a quick question. Are the
Sure.
building blocks here the same as the building blocks in GovStack?
Yes, GovStack was together, is a partner of us as well.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, this mapping exercise was done together by DIO, Estonia, ITU, and the organizations composing GovStack. So we cataloged many different products, which are digital components used in implementations worldwide. So here we have basically, we do machine reading from basically all the source of open source products which exist. So DPGA, we do for GitHub, for WHO registry. And we also started introducing our commercial products. So you can see, you can use one of our filters here, for example, to see them. The commercial products were listed by myself. And well, for all these real world initiatives here, I ask someone who's making noise, please to mute. Thanks. And well, we have many of our filters, so you can filter by the related SDGs, for example. So here you can filter by our use case naturally, so the ones which are more linked with yours. You can link it by the workflows and the building blocks, which I mentioned from GovStack. And we have also many of our tags here that you can use. This is just for user experience. Also by the origin of them, by the endorsing organization, I'll talk more about it, by the country, by our list of sectors, and by the organization which are created or provide fiscal sponsorship for this project. We have our open data here, so talking about the core content of this course. The agriculture and rural development ones were listed by me, so you can see that, for example, just FAO ones, we divided the whole FAO stat, and we have all the FAO ones really listed here. We also have some of open data source that we did machine reading, and you can apply similar filters to all of them. So here you have data sets, you have AI models, standards. Within data sets, you can include both the database themselves and the repositories of data. So for example, we're staying in agricultural, International Food Policy Research Institute is a repository. They even host some data, but they really point to many other databases. So our idea here is to be a hub for all of these. We have projects here. As you know, projects are severe ones. So we have more than 4,000 listed here. You can apply the similar filters, and organizations working here as well. And in the organizations, we have 800 listed, and here it is hosted the information about the endorsing organizations of the digital principles. So you can see here, you can filter them by their endorsing year as well, and country and sector naturally. That's one of the tasks that I did, which was cleaning this list. And well, we have our maps, but I showed you in the PPT how they work. And one of the feedbacks we gained at the beginning of this year was that, yes, we have a very good number of things listed here, but how to deploy them, how to use them. So based on this, we started creating our library of playbooks which are basically step-by-step guidance on how to deploy some digital tools or how to deal with the digital part of your initiative. So for example, you can have both on how to deploy Moja Loop, which is a very commonly known platform for financial services. Or you can simply have how to deal with the cybersecurity of your initiative. And here, for example, we created some of them, the ones which don't have logo, and we started working with external partners. So here's our first one, and we have many others upcoming for creating more playbooks. And I like the endorsing from the digital principles. In the catalog, we are open here for any organization which already has content. As I said, we don't ask anything to be created for us, but any organization which has content which is more or less in this format of step-by-step guidance to suggest a playbook for us. You can create a user account. I will paste here my link of my calendar. My calendar is always open for people wanting to collaborate. And well, we can partner in many different ways. We share the playbooks in our newsletters and many different formats within our ecosystem. And our idea, once again, is to gather this knowledge on deployment of tools, which is siloed nowadays, and we want to be a hub for this. So that's basically the catalog itself. So you can use here, you can navigate and use our filters when you are searching for products, data, projects, and organizations. Or if you want to search more target to your needs, we have this tool that I really like it, which is our recommendations wizard. So let's say, for example, like here, you wanna, that's more for the ideation part of a project, but for all of them. So let's say, for example, I wanna have a project within digital data and technology sector and using ICT infrastructure application, let's say. You can use additional project information, but you may not need. You can use all our tags and the country which you imagine the project being implemented. So as we are based in Washington, let me pick the United States. You can select some mobile services. So let's say API, mobile internet, SMS, and USSD. You select the building blocks that you are wanting. So yeah, you can use data collection. We will need registration, no need for payments, identification and authentication. We use messaging, we use scheduling, and basically this. And then we turn back to you first with the digital principles for each of the steps that you may be wanting. So for ideation, for planning, for implementation, for evaluation and monitoring. And you have similar projects in this area. And you have other products that were used in similar initiatives for this. Which use case can be linked? So if you want to learn more theoretically, you can go for our use case of remote learning. You have the building blocks, which are related to them. And you have some additional resources, which are hosted in other parts of our website, such as our handbook on data for development, our procurement guide. For the ideation phase, this doesn't. And for evaluation and monitoring, we have our value and impact toolkit. And you can also find some mobile network aggregators here. And our developers are currently working for also include our open data cards and our playbooks here. So you can use this tool for searching for basically all the parts of your initiative, the digital principles, projects, products, organizations related to them. So, well, we have 10 minutes left. I will open the session for questions that you may have, and I will paste here the links for the digital principles, the catalog and recommendation wizard, and also for my calendar and my LinkedIn if you want to stay in any contact. As I mentioned, I work mainly with agriculture and rural development. We especially the ones from WFP as well. Would be very interesting to have talks, but with all of you. And really, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. That's my, as I said, I started working with the principals in June, and our team has recently changed a lot. So that's my first time presenting, and well, it was a pleasure to be here with you. The floor is yours.
I have a small question about these resources that you were talking about, Mateus. The wizard that you were just showing, and the handbooks and everything. Would it be possible to have a link for all of these?
Surely. So I just pasted the Digital Principles organization. There you can find in our resource tab, you have many different resources. These are the Digital Principles resource, which if you go in the recommendations wizard, they are included. But we also have the DIO resource itself, which then you can find by navigating in our main page, which I'll also paste them here. And someone new asked, the products here are from the GPA registry. That's one of our sources. That's one of our main sources and most reliable source for sure. They are very important. DIO is actively involved with many groups partnering there. But not only. If you go to the catalog, you see that in the products, you can go for our filters here, and you filter by origin in the products tab of the catalog, and you have DIO OSC, which is our own our open source center. Have digital government platform tech tracker, sorry, digital health atlas, digital public goods alliance, the DPGA registry, digital square, GIZ, the German organization, manually entered, basically me, and UNICEF COVID registry.
Are there any more questions or things you would like to discuss with Mateus? Now he is here in the room with us. Anybody?
Yeah,
just a question.
Sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
Yes, I wanted to find out if we're going to have a more extensive session or perhaps some assignments or something like that, just to practice the digital development. I think the breakout sessions were quite brief, and I think not much was achieved.
Cynthia, I'm pasting here for your interest in going deeper in the digital principles. I'm pasting the link for our forum where you can have the discussions. If you want more theoretical content, I'm also pasting now. You probably saw this already, but the link for all of our courses. You took the introductory ones, but we have many different courses. And as I mentioned in the other question, in the Digital Principles website, you can also find our resource. And in our resource, you can go deeper in your own as well. About possible activities, yes, we ended up having a short time for this, but well, we are always open for further sessions. And the next one is new, right?
Sorry?
You have your question as well, no?
No, you just pasted your Calendly. I was going to inquire about that. So thanks.
It's free to talk both about the digital principles or the catalog. Talk about any potential partnerships. That's something that, as I mentioned, it's our core thing. We don't pretend to do everything by ourselves. We work for partner and scaling up.
I thought there was somebody else who also wanted to put a question, or was that you, Neil? At the same time, Cynthia was mentioning.
Oh
Was
yeah,
Neil.
I was
That was you.
I let Cynthia go before
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Any other last question, maybe? Or something you would like to share? Otherwise, we can check out, and we wish you a good Saturday, and we look forward. On Slack, we posted indeed the introduction course, so if you didn't take it, you can try to do it. And otherwise, we will see you next week again on Thursday for the next sessions. But don't hesitate to contact me or Parvati, Claudia, if you want to discuss things or anything that's relevant for our first introductory weeks. I wish you all the best and stay in touch. Thank you very much, Mateus.
Thank you very
Very much for this opportunity.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You and
Thank you.
when you have a partnership, I'm here. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Mateus. Bye.
Bye.